Chicago Bears fans, welcome back to the channel. First things first, I want to say shout out Windy City Gridiron for preparing this file and what you see on your screen that we're able to follow along and go through the initial 53-man roster. But one challenge that I want to give to you is we react to this roster. Now understand, we're not going through all of the guys who were cut. We're basically talking about the strengths and weaknesses of the guys currently on the initial 53. Now, I do want to give a disclaimer and say that there's guys who could still be cut. There's guys who could be traded, guys who are cut on other teams who can be brought into Chicago. That's one thing that you have to watch out for and stay updated with. But right now, this is what we have, and this is what we're going to talk about today. But getting back to my challenge to all you guys, I do want to say that throughout this video, while you're watching, I want you to give me that one guy who surprised you. Who was your biggest surprise cut on the Chicago Bears team, and who was the guy that you didn't want to see go? I'm challenging you that, so think about that as we get through this roster. Think about that as we get through this video. But we're going to start off with the quarterback position as Justin Fields and Tyson Bagent. Now, Tyson Bagent was a pleasant surprise for me. I really thought P.J. Walker was brought in to be that guy. I thought he would be the guy. But looking at preseason to understand, especially for depth, I think for the starters, we don't want to wait really anything into preseason, but especially for a guy like Tyson, with his story, being an undrafted guy, I think getting this opportunity in this chance after what he showed some pretty solid football in the preseason, you just have to be happy for him. And I think with really all of the guys who were cut, you never want to see a guy lose his job. So hopefully they can find work in positions and roles on other teams somewhere else. But Tyson Bagent is locked in as that QB2 for right now. Now, I do want to talk about Justin Fields because we haven't talked about Justin Fields for a minute. The last time I really talked about him, he was 3 of 3, 129, 2 touchdowns. So now we're getting back into it. Outside of the big time running after the catch by DJ Moore and Khalil Herbert, we're looking at now he played another preseason game. And I look at that week 3 game and I say, okay, I'm not here to say that we shouldn't be as high on Fields as a lot of people have been. I did see some things for optimism in that week 3 game, and I saw some things that say, okay, it's still a work in progress. And I said that with Justin Fields. I'm not saying he won't have a great season, but I do think from a pocket, strictly from in the pocket, this is not about on the run, any of that, any of the bubble screens, but it's talking about he can still process the football field. I think a lot of people understand when I say he can see the read, he can read the football field, make all the progressions, but sometimes when he sees it, he's just not letting the football go. And I will say I saw some of that. Now, from last year to what I saw in the preseason, I do think it's a step forward, a step up. And that's what you really want to see with the mechanics, with the processing, getting the football out quick and on time. I think it was a step up. But I think that where he wants to be and where everybody wants to see Justin Fields at, not there just yet. So it's still going to be that development route. It's really nothing to be worried about. He's still a young guy. And I think with all of the free agents, with the draft, there's a lot of expectations on him. He has some offensive line help now, brought in Darnell Wright, brought in a Nate Davis. So it's looking like, okay, we plugged in the offensive line. We got DJ Moore. It should all click day one. Be patient on it a little bit. It's not to say it won't work. And I want to say that because I know some things I can say get misconstrued and overreacted to, but I'm not saying it won't work. I'm just saying let's hit the pause button a little bit. Let's slow down this. Let's play this back in 0.5 speed rather than fast forwarding it. Because when you look at the weapons and when you look at the offensive line with Justin Fields, I think that Luke Getsy, he's been working with this guy for a minute now. Matt Eberflus, they understand what Justin Fields is and who he isn't. So you have to find that sweet balance. And really from week 1, that's going to start next week, you want to see how can we start the game plan off doing what you're really, really, really good at right now as far as a passer. I'm not talking about the running at all. We know what that is. But how can we build a passing game to really put DJ Moore in a position to make you look good? And we saw that even in the week 3 game where we saw it was some inconsistencies and there were some high moments. I think that when you look at DJ Moore, he had a big time catch and then he got on the run a little bit. We want to see more of that when we get into what we're going to have for this team in that stretch. And then as it gets further, now you're opening up the playbook more. Now you're doing more things with Justin Fields. I'm not going to say he's not a passer because I saw too much football at Ohio State University to say he can't do it. It's just going to take some more time, so I want to let you guys know that. Now, getting into this running back position, we talk about helping Justin Fields and kind of slowing the pace down on saying he's going to leap into a dominant MVP like year 3. I think that we look at these backs, Khalil Herbert, Deonta Foreman, Roshan Johnson, Travis Homer, and Kari Blossomgame as the fullback. And there's a lot of room for optimism. You see, my smile lights up when I talk about this room because there's not a Derrick Henry, there's not a Nick Chubb, but they got three really, really good backs. And even Travis Homer, I think he's a back that plays a role, but he's really good at that role. And I think that Seattle would have loved to keep him in their backfield, but they lost him. You draft Zach Charbonnet, you do some other different things, so you can't keep a guy like this. But Chicago brought him in. So I want to start off with Herbert. And really, these were some of the guys we kind of knew with the backfield who was going to make the team from that perspective. But really, Herbert is a good back, and I think that he's going to offer a lot to this team. We saw with the big-time run after the catch touchdown in that first preseason game, he can give you some of that, and he can give you some of that same thing in the running game. But my guy that I would really keep eyes on is Deonta Foreman in the backfield. When I was watching the Carolina Panthers in that second half of the season, when they had Steve Wilks as the interim head coach, I saw a lot of the run game, and that was Chuba Hubbard, and guess who his counterpart was? Deonta Foreman. So he's one of the bigger guys, and when you see him on the football field, he looks bigger. I think he's about 6'1". I know he's over 210 at least. So we have him in the backfield. And then you look at Roschon Johnson. I think the rookie of the group coming out of Texas, played alongside Bijan Robinson. I've said everything I could say about Roschon, from a mental aspect, from the guy who he is to the guy on the football field. And I think that when he was in, he showed flashes. So you wonder with him, the only thing I would probably say is how much touches will he get? You know, he may be in a reduced role this season. That's just truly how it's going to play out because, yes, it's running back by committee, but when you have two guys who are going to get heavy loads in Deonta and Khalil, where's it going to be at? Unless he really shows in practice that he's that guy that can overstep one of these two backs, but I don't know how early that would be. So we're talking about kind of week one, the early outlook. I would say look at Khalil, look at Deonta, and Travis Homer, a third down guy, is good in pass protection, can catch the football. So you have what you have in the backfield, a really good backfield, and a team who's still in another year going to want to run the football. There's no secret about that. I think everybody, everybody is Chicago Bears fan, everybody in the nation can say the Chicago Bears want to run the football. So now with that being said, let's get into some of those perimeter weapons. Some of the guys on the outside, and that's DJ Moore. We know him from the Carolina Panthers, traded down and got him in that acquisition. It was kind of crazy. I think that to make the Carolina Panthers, it was fair, but it was still, hard to really say, dang, they really went and got DJ Moore. That was aggressive by the Carolina Panthers, and that was a sweet deal by Ryan Poles, being able to say, okay, you want to move from 9-1, you got to give me something. And not only did they get a future first-round pick, but they got DJ Moore. DJ Moore is a number one receiver. Regardless of what you think about the guy, he's a number one. So he's on the team now. I think he's over 1,000. With the connection, we've seen it in training camp, even the short preseason stints. Everything you can see leads to a DJ Moore 1,000-yard season. I think a blind man can see that. Truly, I think he could. But we talk about outside of that. I don't want to spend too much time on talking about him because we know what he is. But Chase Claypool, and really his counterpart in Darnell Mooney, it's going to be staying healthy. And for Chase Claypool, I do want to see that next step in that evolution and development. For Darnell Mooney, I think it's more so staying healthy. I know what he is as a football player, and he's a really good one, should I know. So they complement each other, all of these guys. Chase Claypool being the bigger bodied guy. Darnell Mooney can really work in that slot. And then DJ Moore, he can stretch the field. He can get the ball on bubble screens, on smoke routes. He can do a lot of that. If it's digs, if it's comebacks, if it's out routes, I've seen so much from him. And like I said, when I talked about him, and I have a film breakdown on him, but I said, he's not the smoothest route runner. That's not DJ Moore at all. He's not that crisp in that aspect. I'm not saying he can't run routes, but it's not something you're going to watch all day and say, this is a beauty of artwork. It's not Justin Jefferson. It's not Devontae Adams. But he's so athletic. He can win with his athleticism, and that really gets him open on a lot of routes. And you see what he is after the catch. I said when he catches the football, he turns into a running back. I'm sticking with that statement. Now, Tyler Scott, Velus Jones Jr., Equinemius St. Brown. I think all three good guys to be behind those initial three. And really, Tyler Scott is the wild card for me with that speed, with everything he can do. And you hear Matt Eberflus. You hear them talking about him. He doesn't do wrong today what he did wrong yesterday. Doesn't make the same mistake twice. And yes, his coaches talk is cliche. All of the guys say it for their rookies on any team. But you've seen it. You've kind of seen it with Tyler Scott, so he's going to continue to develop. And what receiver could you better learn from than a DJ Moore, than a Darnell Mooney? One thing I will watch out for with Darnell Mooney is that it is a contract year, so that's something to monitor. Not really trying to rumble anything, but keep your eyes on that for him. And I think with St. Brown, know what he is. He's been in this role for a couple of years now, but he doesn't have to be a guy who's leaned on this year per se. Velus Jones Jr. can return the football. I think he adds to that, and that's really a reason why he's still on the team, looking at a guy like him, and also a pretty solid receiver. So you feel good about that 6. Now, the tight ends, I don't want to spend too much time on the tight ends. I think that Cole Kmet just got the extension. Robert telling you bring him over from Green Bay, the arch rival. Mercedes Lewis, a guy who we know what Mercedes Lewis is, but I think that at this stage in his career, he's about 38 to 39 right now. He's a vicious blocker. I think you add him in, it's probably going to be a lot of 13 personnel. Well, that's 1 running back, 3 tight ends. You're probably going to see a lot of that with this team, especially when they run the football like they do. They can run that wide zone with those 3 tight ends on one side. Probably got DJ Moore on the other side. So you can envision just what I'm saying right there. So I don't want to waste too much time on that. But let's get to the offensive line, though, because you see right here in parentheses, it says the Dan Freeney trade will be official once he passes his physical, and he'll be the 53rd player. So right now, this is a 52-man roster, and then once all of that happens, that gets finalized, it'll be a 53. But I think that is kind of funny because right now, with Dan Freeney included, that's 10 guys on the offensive line. And when I talked about it and what I talked about, I said you want 7, 8 guys. And I think that is a perfect middle balance. So maybe you add these guys in with the Larry Borom, and then you have a guy like a Dan Freeney. You just want to see competition along different pieces and see who's versatile, who can play guard tackle, who can play center guard, and really figure that out to an extent that you're comfortable with. And then you may cut a guy down to add in a certain piece somewhere else. But you never have too many offensive linemen. If it's any position that you want to keep extra, I would say offensive line, but I think we know the starters: Tevin, Cody Whitehair, Nate Davis, Darnell, and then you got Braxton Jones on the other side. So looking at all of that, you feel very comfortable in that. It's definitely an upgrade, and you got to expect Braxton to get better. Tevin Jenkins is now playing guard. Cody Whitehair, he's played center before. Nate Davis, one of the better run blocking guards in football, and Darnell Wright, the rookies everybody's raving about and talking about. So you like what you like. Now, I look at Jatir Carter. When Nate Davis, when he was missing some practices, when, he wasn't in the football game, when you saw a big-time guard in the game, it was Jatir Carter. So I think he's fairly probably him or Lucas Patrick for that 6th guy. And when I say the 6th guy, that's the guy who, if somebody goes down, unless it's a tackle, that is the guy that's going to go in the football game. With the versatility, with everything that can happen, that's kind of that player every offensive line wants on any team. You want that 6th guy who could be a starter on some teams, who's a bench starter. And when I say a bench starter, you're not an above average starter. You're not really that adequate. Every team wants you to start type guy. You're not the elite of the elite. But on certain teams, you could be a starter. On this team, if we put you in with a starter who's down, you wouldn't mess up the rotation. You wouldn't have things looking bad. I think they have that in that 6th to 7th guy with Carter and Lucas Patrick, and then kind of Larry Borom being that swing tackle. And then you got Doug Kramer, Dan Freeney. So you're looking at that offensive line. That's what you have right now. I think that I don't want to say, okay, we look at the offensive line, set it and forget it. But I do think you have to be comfortable because, like I said, it is better than last year. And there's talent there, and hopefully it can gel. That's what I will say. Now, in the preseason, they've looked good. But the only reason I'm saying that is because you don't want to have guys. We haven't seen this in the regular season yet. Darnell Wright is a rookie, and I think he's going to be a good rookie, but there's going to be ups and downs. You still have to look at it. He's not invincible. That's one thing I would say. He could get to that point, but it's still the rookie season. Braxton Jones, I expect him to get a lot better, still not invincible. So you just want to see how they gel, how quickly can they get it. It's not a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when with the offensive line, so that's something you just got to watch for with that. Now, you know this channel. If you've been here, if you're a returning guy, I am a defensive guy. If you've been here, you know we love the defense. You know we do a lot of film breakdowns, and a lot of film breakdowns come from the defensive side of the ball. Also, let me know down below in the comments if you want to see a film breakdown on these guys, or you want to see one that I've already done for a player. You can check that out on the channel, come back and talk about this, or you can request that down below and we'll get that out. I do want to tell you, though, just a quick note, Tyreek Stevenson. I have a video coming out on him, so be on the lookout for that one. Now, talking about the linebackers, I think I've talked about it a lot. You're only going to play two linebackers a lot of the times. It's nickel is the new meta, and when I say meta, that's what a lot of teams do because that's what works in the NFL. That Sam linebacker who we used to see in the NFL that would probably be Jack Sanborn on this team in a traditional quote-unquote throwback role, you're not going to see too much of that right now. You're going to see TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds on the football field and probably that hybrid safety nickel that's going to come in, and I think Kyler Gordon will be that guy. He's not the safety nickel type guy that you usually see, but I think he's more of a corner that plays nickel. And he can get in the box and mangle just a little bit. But Tremaine Edmonds, we know what he is. Now, I do want to say, all fairness, all things aside, I did not like what I saw in the preseason. And I don't want to say there's room for concern because it is preseason. I'm not putting too much weight into it. But let me know if I'm overreacting because I didn't make an exact video talking about this. I think that from the linebacker position particularly, I was just not blown away. And understand a lot of the guys who were on the football field, they're not guys who are on this initial 53. But also adding to that fact, when the starters were out there, I was still not blown away. So something I'm going to be looking at closely and something I'm going to talk about with week one. Now, there's still talent there, though. TJ Edwards coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles, Tremaine Edmonds from Buffalo. And these guys, what I've been saying about them, they've played linebackers for winning teams. For teams, they come from winning organizations who've been winning for a long time. Even with Buffalo, they had a down stretch, but when Tremaine Edmonds was drafted, since he's been drafted, with the development of Josh Allen, he's been part of a winning football team. And even with TJ Edwards, with the Philadelphia Eagles, they've had a couple, in the middle years when Jalen Hurts to transition out of Carson Wentz, but I still think that it's fair to say he's been part of a winning program. So, loving all of that. Jack Sanborn, I'm really high on him. Hopefully he can find himself a solid role in this defense, whether it be rotating out with a TJ Edwards, which I've talked about a lot before because I'm a little higher on Jack Sanborn. Don't know who you guys sit with that, but I really, really like him. Noah Sewell, Dylan Cole, that's your depth at the position, so you want to see those guys develop. Now, getting into defensive end, it's a pretty interesting group, and you see one guy who's not on here, Trevis Gibson, and I think that it's kind of funny when you look at the defensive line. I think that when I talked about it last year and I talked about the defense in my film breakdown on what to expect, I talked about Dominique Robinson, who was a guy who I had my eyes on. DeMarcus Walker, he's a guy who came in from Tennessee, is a versatile guy, inside-out type guy. But I think when you add Yannick Ngakoue, and he's not going to be the long-term solution, but I think for this year at least, he'll give you the pass rush because that was really my biggest concern with the team. Out of all positions, I said, where is the pass rush going to come from? Even with Trevis Gibson, a pretty solid player, but where's the pass rush going to come from? That's my true and honest answer. Now, I see some interesting guys who did not make the 53. Let me know, I said again, who were your surprise cuts? Who was the guy that left that you didn't want to see go? Because as I get further through this, I'm seeing some names who aren't on there. But I see Terrell Lewis. He was a guy who stepped up in training camp. I see Yannick Ngakoue again. I talked about him, the free agent signing. He's going to be big time. Probably if I had to guess, he'll probably get anywhere around 8 to 10 sacks maybe. I wouldn't lean with the under. I would lean right there around 8, if I'm being fairly honest with Yannick and Dominique Robinson taking that step up in the defense. But Terrell Lewis, he's another edge guy. Rasheem Green, a pretty interesting guy to keep your eyes on. So there's room for improvement here. I would really say that it's a better group than last year. I think anything could possibly be better than last year's defensive line group and kind of the linebacker group. But it's still something you want to see developing. You want to monitor that going into week one as things progress. We're going to talk about it, though. We're going to talk about it, but that's where I'm at right now. So I'm not saying it's a strong group, but there's some solid names, some solid guys, and you want to see kind of in that wait-and-see mode. Defensive tackles, though, I'm kind of high on them. You really made back-to-back selections with Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens, and two guys in which I talked about. So I think you were trying to do everything that you could to improve this. And I said when a play was made on the interior, it was Justin Jones. I think he's the leader of this group. He's a nasty physical guy on the interior. And then you add Andrew Billings. He's a veteran. So you really want to see with this defensive line, you know what Justin Jones and Andrew Billings are. But I think you're waiting to see how quickly can Gervon Dexter step into that role where he's an above-average defensive tackle? How quickly can Zach Pickens step into that role? How quickly can they learn off of each other and iron sharpen iron to where they're one of those duos, those two young duos from the interior? And you see a lot of teams are trying to go with that role. Interior, whether you like it or love it, the guys with the pass rush upside from the 3 tech to the 1, they're getting drafted higher and higher. As we further in this discussion, we look at safety. I don't think there's a lot of talking points for a safety. I do think it's interesting. One guy I can tell you that I don't see is Williamson. Kendall Williamson, I don't see him on here, but A.J. Thomas, Elijah Hicks, familiar names in the room. Jaquan Brisker, Eddie Jackson, need no introduction. I said Jaquan Brisker is one of my second-year breakout players, and I stand by that on the defensive side of the ball. So, really good about the safety room, especially with Eddie Jackson. If he can stay healthy for a full season, he's finally back. He's looking like he's back. So, I think that if he can recapture just anything of what he used to be, if he can recapture, I would say anywhere from 80 to 90% of that, you have to feel very comfortable. Now, talking about corner, though, a very interesting position as well. Like I said, for me, my base, if I had to go hybrid nickel, I think I go with Jalen Johnson, of course, the guy who needs to get his money, Kyler Gordon in the nickel, Spider, and then you go Tyreek Stevenson at the other side. So that's what I have there. And then Terrell Smith, he's a guy who's been showing things in the preseason and training camp and OTAs. Have to be high on him. Josh Blackwell, Jalen Jones, kind of some familiar names within that group, but you're getting the gist of it. And I think that one thing I do want to say, though, because I follow everything in the NFL, and one thing I've seen from a lot of teams is that people will say, why do we only have such and such at this position? Why do we have 4 safeties hypothetically? Why do we have 6 corners? Why do we have such and such receivers? I don't think it's not a room for concern, because in the regular season, you're not going to have that rotating and swapping every quarter and driving half and everything. The starters play ball. Unless you're hurt, you're lining up and you're playing ball. You get you a quick water break when you're off the field. Something happens, turnover, boom, quick change, back in the game. So you want depth, of course, but the starters will be the starters, barring injury, knocking on wood for that. So that's talking about that. You know, with special teams, I don't think too much a cause for concern, but you see the long snapper, Patrick Scales, Cario Santos as the kicker, Trenton Gill as the punter. Let me know what you think about the 53 right now. Where are your biggest strengths? I think the biggest strength right now is the running back room, I would say. I like the offensive line. I like the receiving core at the top, and really some of the depth. I look at that. I look at the safety room, one of my bigger strengths. The corner room, I like Gordon, Jalen Johnson. And really with Gordon, it looks like he's more comfortable now. So that's one thing I'll say. But what are your concerns for weaknesses? I talk about the edge still. You know, you add Yannick Ngakoue, but you still want to see. You still truly want to see with some of those guys. I think that one thing I'll also say is now the linebacker position. There's talent there, but we have to actually show it. That's one thing I'll say. So really edge, you know, linebacker, it's not a true weakness, but you look at the strengths of some of the other positions and you say, okay, I need you to ball like these other positions will ball, how they're looking right now. Let me know what you think about that. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on the video. We're coming out with more roster previews and breakdowns. Like I said, talk about everything. But if you're really a true sports fan, don't forget to subscribe truly, because next season and drop down those film breakdowns, we're all on it. I mean, it's just 1 week away. 1 week away. It's Tuesday right now. We're starting on actually Thursday next week. So we're a week and 2 days from NFL football. I think that says everything that I got to say. That's going to do it for today's show once again. Thank you for watching as always. And now we out.